All right, so I'd like to introduce to you our speaker tonight, Jonathan Derosers.
Hi. All right, everyone. I'm excited to be here and give you the lowdown on what's going on in 5.8. Like I said before we start recording, I have some breaks built in. I have it broken into a couple of different segments. So, if you have a question on a section, you can either drop it in the chat and I'll try to answer those as I go through these sections, or you can just hold on to it till one of those breaks. So let's see, it looks like I need you to give me permission to share my screen.
I'm sorry, I thought I did that.
That's okay.
One step at a time. You keep moving around on my screen. There you are. Make co-host. That should be able to give you.
There we go.
Got it now?
Okay.
There we go.
I think so. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just closing one thing so that doesn't suck up all my. Okay. So today I'm here to talk about what you need to know about WordPress 5.8. WordPress 5.8 and 5.9 are going to be some of the bigger releases since WordPress 5.0 and Gutenberg was introduced. And the reason is that we're really laying the foundation for another fundamental change in how you build your websites. And so there's a lot going on, and it's even I get lost at times, and I have to go find some articles to read up and documentation to make sure I'm understanding things correctly. So I'm here today to help you understand that without having to dive as deep into the docs as I have and know what's going on. So a little bit about me. I work at Bluehost. I'm one of a handful of people that are sponsored full-time to work on WordPress core, or speak at meetups and all different kinds of things in the community. We're just here to help WordPress grow and be successful and help everybody, have the tools that they need through the software to be successful. I'm a WordPress core committer. And today, a little fun tidbit today is actually my 8th anniversary of my first contribution to WordPress. So I meant to do something fun on Twitter, but I forgot. So I'm going to hang out with you all and celebrate instead. And I'm also the 5.8 co-release coordinator. And so usually we have one release coordinator per release on the release squad. There's a handful of different roles. There's a documentation wrangler. There's a core tech lead for every release. And because there's so much going on in this release, we have 2 coordinators that are working on the technical side to coordinate the merging of all the code, and on the project side to coordinate the meetings and stuff like that. So I'm more on the technical side on this release. So a little bit about releases. So 5.8 is what we call a major release. So a major release would be x.y+1, so 5.8, 5.9, 6.0. And those happen about every 3 to 5 months. So we typically aim to schedule 3 per calendar year, but it's also not unheard of to have 4 in a year or 2 in a year, depending on what's going on. And the minor releases are x.y.z+1. And so those are 5.7.3, 5.5.5, and things of that nature. These are meant to give you small self-contained enhancements, bug fixes, security fixes, and these go out every 6 to 12 weeks in between each major release. So we don't want you to have to wait those 3 to 5 months for bug fixes or anything of that nature, security fixes. So the minor releases are very important to keeping all the latest fixes going out to you as a site owner. And there's typically 1 to 4 of these per major release. So what I mean by that is between 5.7 and the time that 5.8 goes out. We've had, I believe, 3 this release cycle. So we're right in the middle of that. So 5.8, this is the release schedule here. And as you can see, we're coming up to the end of it. On last Tuesday, we had our release candidate 2. And a release candidate, if you're not familiar with the software cycle, is basically here's what we think is ready to be shipped to the masses as the next version. And there might be some very small regressions that get fixed or some additional refinements that happen, but as limited as possible changes during this period. We have one more on this following Tuesday, the 13th. And then the following Tuesday, we have the general release of the 5.8. So that would be July 20th. So keep an eye out for that. So I'm going to kind of work from the least complicated to the more connected, interconnected, and complicated features. So you might have heard a lot about this, but 5.8 will be the first WordPress release to not support IE 11. And coincidentally, after we announced that, Microsoft also announced that in June of 2022, they would be officially ending support for IE 11. So I don't want to say that Microsoft follows WordPress's lead, but we were first in that. So what does this mean? So if you, from a user standpoint on the front end, this probably won't mean much. When you have the style sheet for a theme, WordPress core does not have any real effect on that style sheet. It's mostly in the admin area. The most noticeable area will be if you're using IE 11 still, the block editor might be a little bit janky for you. You might have some issues accomplishing certain things in there. And then the other thing that might affect you is the admin styles for the colors, the different color schemes. So there might be some weirdness going on there. But if you build themes and you still need to support IE 11 for some reason for your user base, maybe the people that visit the website that you work on, maybe they're stuck on a specific distributional Windows or something like that. So you can still control that. Another exciting thing in 5.8 is we have added support for WebP. WebP is a modern image format. It was created about 10 or 11 years ago by Google. And typically you'll find that a WebP format image is between 25 and 35% less in size than a JPEG or a PNG. So this is really great. If you use Jetpack now and you have Photon enabled, they've actually been serving WebP formats WebP formats for you already. They would convert them on the Photon side and then serve them to your users. But now that's built into WordPress, and so you'll be able to have your site. You can upload WebP, or there's also a new filter that was enabled to allow you to say which image formats should have the subsizes generated in WebP format. So say that you don't really care about you're really looking for performance on your website. You can set all of your image formats when you upload them, all the image sizes that are registered on your site that WordPress generates automatically to go to WebP. And so right off the bat, you could save on disk size and bandwidth and all of that type of stuff. It's not right for everybody. WebP is supported by all major browsers now. It was actually blocked by Internet Explorer because that was the last browser that we supported that did not support WebP. So that enabled us, dropping support for IE 11 enabled us to add WebP support. And there's also some operating systems where it's a little tricky to open WebP images. You might have to install a special program to be able to do it. So it's not for everybody, but from a performance standpoint, it's definitely it's going to be interesting to see how this gets adopted and who uses it and how, because there's definitely potential for, if a hosting company turns it on by default, they could really save a lot of bandwidth and file size there for their customers. So another exciting one is site health. So in site health now, there's the ability to extend the interface. So since site health was merged in, I believe, 5.2, 5.1, there's only been 2 tabs, status and info. And plugins have done a really good job of adding adding additional checks to these 2 pages, and info will show you some debug information about your server and what's enabled, what's disabled on your website. But now in 5.8, plugins can add their own custom tab. And so it really gives them the power to have a more centralized like resource center for you to go to for information that's very specific to that plugin. Maybe you have an SEO plugin and you go there and it would give you all the warnings, all the critical things to pay attention to, all the performance things and so on that have to do with that plugin. We've also continued to improve PHP 8 support. So this is a really tricky one because we can't really say that WordPress fully supports PHP 8 because PHP 8 is a very drastic change. There's a lot of changes within PHP 8 that that change how you can trying to think of the right way to say it. So a lot of the new features in PHP 8 are not backwards compatible. And so it's hard for us to fully embrace PHP 8 in WordPress because we have a commitment to PHP 5.6 and higher right now. So until the usage numbers of PHP 5 and PHP 7 get lower, we can't actually drop support for those because they would be dropping for way too many websites and users. So we're doing the best that we can to ensure that WordPress does work on PHP 8, but we're not able to take advantage of all the new features of PHP 8 just yet. And so that's what this is about. It's a continuous thing. We're continuing to improve it. We're continuing to prepare WordPress for when that time comes. We'll be able to make that jump to some more modern coding practices. And this has started. This has been going on for over a year now. We're basically just a continuous process. And this spans our testing suite as well. It's not just within the actual released code of WordPress. It's also in our tooling and our testing library as well. All right, so the first break. So does anyone have any questions on any of these things that we've talked about so far?
So for PHP 8, are you saying that that WordPress would work with PHP 8 now, but it's not using the features, or it just wouldn't work at all?
Nope. So since PHP 8 was released last November or December, WordPress will run on PHP 8. You might find some scenarios where you encounter a notice or a warning or something of that nature, but there's some more modern language constructs that we can't take advantage of in WordPress. So, for example, like type hinting in the function names, you could say that this parameter will always be an array, or there's some aspects of that we cannot embrace yet.
Sure. So you don't take advantage of the non-backward compatible features, but you would work with it.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it. And then for WebP, are you saying that you'll blast out WebP no matter if the browser has a WebP accepts in the header? In the headers, if somebody sets it for WebP, you're just going to send it as WebP, right?
Yeah. So good question. So by default, WordPress will generate the image subsizes for the image that you upload in the same format as the image that you uploaded. So if you upload a JPEG, it's going to generate all JPEGs. But if you do upload a WebP, all the subsizes will be WebP, and then those will be what get defined on the page.
Okay, so it just completely switches to WebP. It's not some are WebP and some are JPEG, depending on what the browser says, right?
Correct. Yep. It's in the same format that you upload. However, with that filter that I mentioned and that plugin that I showed, that one doesn't detect the header, but it could. You could do things like that with and figure out which format to serve. But on upload, it's going to generate one specific image type for the subsizes.
Got it.
Okay. And we're exploring maybe switching that to which I'm actually not in favor of this, but it's an interesting experiment. What if we did switch it to image formats generated WebP instead, and then we served WebP to the entire web? So things like that to think about. I don't think that'll ever happen in WordPress itself. That's definitely plugin land. But we're interested to see what people do to experiment with that and what they make with this.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was that was all very good to hear. I didn't realize how the versatility with the WebP. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yep, the IE11 was the last major browser. Safari partially supports it, but that's only because older versions of Safari did not. But I'm pretty sure that all major, all of the last 3 or 4 versions of Safari do support it. So,
could you just say what good site health is to a normal user who doesn't know what to do with it?
Sure. Let me.
I could tell you tech support really likes it.
Yeah, let me show you. I have a site. Can you see? I have a WordPress site up right now on my screen.
Looks good. Yep.
Okay. So this is just a default install. So if I were to go to site health, it's going to tell you any warnings you have. So like I have a couple security. This is a local install. So some things like this are flagged because they can't actually be checked. Like my background updates are not working properly, but that's because this is a Git checkout and not an actual install. But if I go to the info tab, for example, if we continue talking about WebP, we also added this field, this release, and it will actually tell you what image formats are supported by your server. So these are all the formats that if you uploaded, they could be manipulated. The images could be manipulated on the server. And so we could see, okay, WebP is supported. So my web server does support WebP. There will be some that do not. And you might have to reach out to your host and ask them for help getting that set up. But there's also this right here, copy set into clipboard, and it will copy all this info of the themes that you have active and inactive, your directory with the sizes, your server setup, what version of PHP, what distribution you have running, and all that stuff. So this is very useful as a non-technical person. It gives you some very important information that you can pass on to someone that is trying to help you troubleshoot. And then when the plugins start adding tabs up here, you'll also have, so say you have an SEO plugin, you'll have a tab for that SEO plugin. You reach out to their support, they might ask for that information, or they might ask you if you have any warnings on that page. So it's just a way for them to provide these more technical checks and details to the user, and for them to provide them back to them to help them troubleshoot more effectively.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, I love site health. Yeah.
All right. I think we're last call for questions on this section. I know that first section was really great, but there's a lot more, so get ready. It gets better too.
All right, I think we're ready.
All right. So now there's another bucket, and these are 3 workflow helpers. The first one is my favorite. So who has, just by a show of hands here, who uses the block editor exclusively? Okay, we got a couple hands. Yeah, this is my first remote talk. I like to ask questions to the audience, so I'm trying. It doesn't translate well sometimes, but I see a couple of hand raised. Okay, that's good. So one thing that I get is the block editor is great. You can nest blocks, you can have columns, and you can have columns in columns, and it helps you lay out content on the page. But I often get lost, and sometimes I have trouble selecting the actual block that I want to edit. And so this list view is awesome because you can click that, you can see all of the blocks on the page, how they're nested. You can select exactly the one that you want. And this stays open if you open it and you're editing. So I actually really love this because this helps me out a lot. The next one is suggested block patterns. So there's a handful of blocks where when you click, when you're editing a block, in the top left, if you click this icon, you'll actually see a list of blocks that you can transform that block into. So for example, a paragraph block, you can transform that into other text-based blocks like a heading, a pull quote, and there's a couple others. So in this one, it's a social block, and you can transform it to columns or a group, or now you'll actually have suggestions for block patterns that are related. And these are powered by the block pattern library, which I'll go into a little bit more details in a little bit. So basically some more helpers and suggestions for you to edit contextually as you're editing your content. If anybody's really into Duotone, there's a new Duotone feature where you can take an image and you can apply, a gradient, to any combination of two colors that you'd like. So it's a cool new way to manipulate your images and kind of give it a little bit of your own flair. And I mentioned new block patterns in the second one. And so this is a preview of what .org is going to end up looking like. But I think everybody should be familiar with the block library by now, because let's see, I'll pull it up and I'll show. When you're editing a post and you go to the block inserter here, these are all the blocks that you have available to you. But say I'm looking for a map block. I don't have any map blocks installed on my site, but it's going to actually go to WordPress.org and it's going to look in the block directory, which is similar to the plugin and theme directories. They have different guidelines, but it's very similar. And I can see that there are 5 map block plugins that are available for me. So say I want to click that one, I can install it right here while I'm editing my page. And then I get my map block just like that. So the pattern directory is a similar concept, but it's for patterns. So I have the TT1 blocks theme active right now, but I can actually come over here and I can see different submitted block patterns that are submitted to this curated directory. There's very few in there right now, and it's pretty heavily curated to make sure that everything is different and it will work for as many people as possible. But this is going to keep an eye out for this to grow going forward. And then say I want to insert that. And then I have this nice block pattern. I can replace it with my whatever images that I want, whatever text I want. And so that's what I mean when I say the block pattern directory. So this will eventually show up on WordPress.org. For now, it's available within your website, and you can browse some interesting patterns there. Sometimes it's just that that spark that you need to find a layout. And, oh, that's really cool, but not quite what I want. Let me use that as a starting point and go in and manipulate that. And then one of the other big features of this release is the block widget editor. So in 5.8, what you'll notice is that the widget screen now resembles the block editor screen. And I'm actually really happy with how this came out. We had some bugs early on, and we had to put a little bit more thought into it a couple of releases ago. But it's actually come out really nice, and I'm really happy with it. So any block that you could put into a post while you're editing a post or a page, you can put into the widget editor. The only thing is this does not support patterns, because patterns are meant more for pages and not to be within sidebars. So, but any block that you have, you can insert into this sidebar. You will see all the sidebars. You'll see all the sidebars just like you would on the old screen. And like I said, it's really, really come out nice. You might notice that your theme might need to have a little bit more styling. So for example, some themes, the sidebars have different background colors, or they're styled a little bit differently than the content area of the site. So you might need to add some styles to account for that. But for the most part, it will show up correctly, and it will work great. Okay, so any questions on that? Would it help to show a demo of the widget area to see kind of what it looks like in action? let's see here.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. There was a question about about these pattern libraries in the things about, will they require updating also? And are they, you had said this one's heavily curated, but the idea is they will be approved like plugins.
Yeah, good question. So I showed two things in that demo. So the first one was the blocks that you find. These, when you add a block, like I added the map block, that's installing a plugin. It's a special kind of plugin that is made, has different requirements. Those do get updated. The patterns do not, though, because patterns are just a configured set of blocks. So for example, if I were to insert, let's do this 2-image showcase. And then if I were to look at the list view, you can see that it's just a media and text widget. And then there's an image within the text area of that media and text widget. So because these are blocks only, and those are in WordPress core, you don't have to update your patterns. If you want to change the pattern itself, so maybe the pattern changes upstream in the directory, you can go reinsert it again, but you would get that new pattern that you inserted would have the new format. The old ones will stay the way that they were when you inserted them.
That's
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, that was Lisa. That was, I didn't even think of that. Like one more thing to get updated and break everything. I'm glad they don't.
Yep, nope, those are all built in. So that once you copy it in, it's just your regular blocks.
Any other questions? Nobody's typing anything. I think we got blocks. Now, you had mentioned that block.
Wait, you said you were going to do a demo of the widget area.
Yes, you're right, I did.
There you go.
I'm not letting you get ahead from that.
That's okay, let's do that. Let me see here. I had the Gutenberg plugin active. So the Gutenberg plugin is still around, even though WordPress got merged into, Gutenberg got merged into WordPress. And so basically that's where the new features are built for the next versions of WordPress. So I just deactivated it just to show you. We actually have our block plugin here as an error here. Deactivate. To show you some of the things that are coming, but I'll turn it back on later and I'll show you the difference and I'll explain that. So this is but the default widgets that get installed on 2021. So I could add images here. I could add a quote. Really great. Yeah. And we could add, we could browse all of our blocks. We get the same inserter interface here.
Wow.
Excuse me, maybe I wanted to put a video in here and then update and saved. And I have my quote here. So there are still a few things to take into consideration. One is the editor is still vertically based, vertically oriented. So that's nothing new. It's kind of always been like that. But for most themes or some themes, they use sidebars for the footer, and then they'll stack each widget horizontally. So that could be a little strange in some situations. The good way to deal with that is by grouping elements. So if you group them, they would be one block, and so they would kind of align that way. So say I wanted to add something to this column here, I could insert a block into that group, and then it would be included in that group there. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then, like I said before, that some themes have different background colors. This is going to take the same, this is going to use the same styles as the post editor would. So you're going to see the same thing. So if there's different background colors, you might have to make some adjustments to your styling to target this area here, so that in the editor, the blocks display a little differently. And these will work in the customizer as well. So if that's how you usually interact with widgets, they'll give you a nice little joyride here. And I can add blocks here just as I would. And you'll see the preview here as well. So that another great feature if you want to see it in action as you're editing it contextually.
Wow.
Yep, I see a hand.
Yes, I wanted to know, once, let's say you have an existing site and everything is totally fine. And now 5.8 comes around and you can now use the block editor in your sidebar areas. Will that hurt any existing widgets? Like, should you go and do a full replacement, like a one-to-one replacement? Or can you leave a mix or a hybrid of old style widgets and block widget area things? So, yeah.
Good question. So I'm just going to mute you just for the feedback. So there is a legacy widget. And so this is used to for the old kind of format widgets. Any widgets that you have that exist when you update, they will stay in this legacy widget style. So you can see here, it's a little bit of a different interface to edit it. So if I do that, it will still preview it when you click off. And I can't say for sure that all widgets will continue to work. But for the most part, the ones that are doing things correctly and they're setting themselves up properly, the WordPress, the recommended way to create widgets, they should seamlessly update. They should be here and they should be accessible. But your ability to expand on them or change them might be a little bit hindered. So I definitely recommend, if you have the ability to set up a staging site, update to 5.8, give it a try, just see if you might have any issues. And I think you might be surprised at how seamless it works, and everything works great. But I can't say for sure that there will be no problems, because it's likely that some widgets will need to be updated a little bit.
So did this enable automatically, or did you have to click something? This will be 5.8.
Yep, this will enable automatically when you update to 5.8. Yep. Everything that I've showed you so far will be included by default, with the exception of the WebP image subsizes that we discussed.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other hands? We can always circle back to some of these things too at the end if you think of more questions.
It's going good.
All right. So 5.8 also sees a bunch of new blocks that were added. And the next, I'm going to cover 3 or 4 different topics, and they're all very closely related. So hang with me until I get to the end of the section, and then you're going to kind of see it all come together. So there are probably about a dozen new blocks. There's a pageless block that's added in 5.8. There are also a handful of site-related blocks. So things like the site logo, the site title, a login or out block that has a link to log in or out based on whether you're logged in or out. There's also a handful of post-related blocks. And so these are a little limited in how you can use them. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But it will show things like, the post featured image, the categories, the title, content, all things that you would typically, I like to think of it as all the things that you would typically put code into a template file to display if you were writing a theme or you were telling it to display in your PHP files. And then another feature that I'm really excited about is the query loop block. So if you've ever created a theme or had to hop in and edit how a theme works, you're probably familiar with the concept of the loop. And so you'll see like WP query, the loop, have posts, and all these different functions that control, it controls how WordPress goes through a list of posts, prepares that post information for PHP to use, and then you're able to output the details for that post in a loop. So we have, of course, it's not going to work. I have a GIF here, but it's been very spotty on me here. Let's see if I can get it to.
It's the black screen of death.
I know, I had a nice demo. I think my GIF file is just too large for it. Let me see. I can pull up the file.
Be interesting to see it going through the loop. You're going to do a sample of using the loop.
Yes, I did have a GIF capture, like I said. Oh, and it looks like it's going for me, but not. Okay, we'll do a live demo. How about that?
A live one. Oh.
All right, so say I had, so the example I used was, say I was making a recipes page. And on this page, I want to list all of my recipe posts. So I'm going to put a query loop block in. And so in the query loop block, you also have predefined layouts available to you. So similar to how patterns work, but not quite. They're specific to posts on your site. Excuse me. Okay, so you can actually cycle through the different options available to you, or you can view them all in a grid way. So let's say I want to use this format right here. And so now I have that loop concept in this one block in my post, and I didn't have to write any PHP for it. Say I want to display 10 pages on this, and I only wanted it to be a specific category. I don't have a category right now, but this would autocomplete, and you could select the category as you typed it. You could select the specific author's posts that you want to display. Maybe I want them to be alphabetical, and all of that will update as you change these settings. So then when I publish this and I go take a look at it, it will show my posts, and I don't have any images on that. And it's actually showing this post here because I'm also, I created a post. I should have created a page to show my posts, but it's listing itself. But in my example,
A page. Yeah.
a little inside. Oh, and here we go. And now I come back to it and my demo is going to work. Is it going to work?
That's very powerful, because right now I think to do that, I either have to load another plugin or I have to write the template myself.
Yeah. So if my demo worked, which we'll give it one more try, it's not gonna. After I've inserted I inserted that same format with the image on the left and the title on the right. There's no excerpts. Let's see. So I have it set to just display the post title. That's what this one does. If if I click on the list view, I can see I have a query loop block with a post template block, which I'll explain next. And then within that, I have columns. I have 2 columns with a featured image and then the post title. And so it's going to list out as whatever I configure to show. It's going to display it. And like I said, you don't have to know how to write any PHP code. You don't have to have any idea what the loop is or how to iterate through posts. It's all going to be right in the block. It's going to handle it for you.
Nice, nice.
Now it's going to work. Okay, so I'll let it play. It'll be a little zoomed out, but so in this example, I had a couple of recipes and I found the layout that I liked. And then I know that I only wanted my recipe category to show up.
Can you limit how, oh yeah, items per page, great.
Yep.
Does it add the pagination?
No, I do not believe it has pagination. So this is mainly meant to display a list of posts right now that you don't iterate through. I'm sure that that's been considered and there might be plans to do that, but at this basic level right now, that's all that it supports in WordPress at least. And then this is an example. I inserted a different format in that selector. I found I used the first one. And so you can see that we have a query loop block with a post template block, which again, I'll explain next. And this one has the post title, the featured image, the excerpt, a separator, and a post date block in there. And that's what I meant when I said that these will make sense in a little bit. These don't mean that the current post you're on will display. These are more dynamic. So these show in the query block, they'll show the post being displayed in the query loop block. And then this post template block can only be used within the query loop block. And essentially what that is it's a way to lay out your post. So in this example, the post template is the featured image on the left in a column and the right column having the post title. And so every one of those, when we inserted the query loop block, I insert a new one. Every one of these that you see is a post template block. And it's like I said, it's similar to patterns, but they're specific to posts only, and they're only meant to be used within these query loop blocks right now.
Lisa, do you have your hand up or is that from last time?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to answer questions right now. I just was putting it up because I have some questions.
Sure, hit me. What do you got?
Oh, so I started first thinking about what was the difference between a post template and a pattern and a block pattern, but I think you kind of shared how that would be different. So my next question is relating to post templates. Where do they come from? Like if I'm using an older style theme, is that going to have a post template? Is it something I need to make? Or is it that when you're using a theme like a 2021 or some of the very block friendly, full site editor friendly things, they would naturally have post templates?
Yeah, good question. The block editor will come with some post templates by default. And so the ones that you were seeing as I was clicking through, those for the most part are the default templates. The block-based themes, the newer style themes, which I'll also talk about in a little bit, they can define as many post templates as they want. There's ways for them to define those. The older style themes, it might take a little bit more work for them to define them, but it is possible for them to define them. I won't get into the details of how to implement those things today, because we could spend a whole nother meetup topic on it and learning how to theme for the block editor. So there's lots of documentation. If you go to the developer hub, which is developer.wordpress.org, there's a whole section that's block editor based, and they have a lot of good documentation that they update with every Gutenberg release, every plugin release, detailing how to best accomplish these things.
Yeah, it just makes your old themes seem older.
And old themes aren't going away. I mean, it's likely 10 years from now, we're going to still be having some sites that have old style themes. You know, it's built in a way where they'll still work. They'll still be able to use the block editor and blocks and all the great features. But there are some of the newer features in the block editor that will take a little bit more effort to make the older themes work. And so those, which will become a little bit, one of those examples is templates, which I'll go over. And some of them are, there's a couple templates and there's a couple different terms that seem to overlap. And so just remember, post template is different from template, and I'll go over that.
All right. The theme JSON.
So another new feature in WordPress 5.8 is the theme.json file. So in traditional themes, you have your style.css, and that defines how your site looks with, you know, whatever CSS definitions you need. The block-based themes will have a theme.json file, and essentially that will tell the block editor how the site should look and function for that theme. So anything from link colors to, you know, whether you can, there's a whole bundle of different, they're called block supports. And so, for example, the Duotone feature that I mentioned earlier, you can actually say which blocks support that feature and which blocks don't. You can say maybe which colors are allowed to be selected for the text in certain blocks and which ones are free form, where you can select your own color for certain things. So this is basically, this is your future of themes, where you're going to have the ability to put all of the information about how your theme should function right into that JSON file. And the block editor knows how to consume this and digest it and break it into different sections so that it knows how to tell it to operate. And so from there, you have the template editor. And so this, the theme.json file is basically a flag that the theme is a newer style theme. It's a block-based theme. So when that is present, the block editor knows that you are you're very block conscious, I'll say. So you've thought this through. You're telling the block editor how you want it to function and behave for your theme. So when that's the case, there's something called the template editor. And so I guess the line that I'll draw here is that this is not in WordPress 5.8 unless you have a block-based theme. So if you have a theme.json file, this will be in your 5.8 install, but you still will require the Gutenberg plugin. And the reason for this is that all of these things that I've talked about in this last segment, the query loop block and you know, in full site editing, which has been talked about a lot, they're all so connected that it's hard to find where to cut it in half to put some of it in 5.8 and then the rest of it in 5.9 when it's ready. So those blocks are ready. The site blocks, the post blocks, those are in 5.8. Those are ready. You can use those. The query loop block is ready, like that. You can use that. But things like the navigation block, that still needs a little bit more work. And so that's not going to be included in 5.8. So with the template editor, which you'll see in a minute, it doesn't make sense to have that without the navigation block in a classic theme. So a template is essentially, you can think of the template editor, you're setting up the way that you used to use a PHP file with template name up at the top of the file. And so this is what the template editor will look like. So you come into the template editor, and it will have like a black border around it. And so when you're in this section here, you're editing the structure of the site of this template. And you can use this template in as many places as you'd like. And it's going to be a little easier if I show you in a live demo. Going to activate Gutenberg. And like I said, you need to have a block-based theme enabled. Okay, so now when I have both of those active, you'll see that there's a site editor here. And so it's still in beta, but you can still use it and get around, and it works really well. So you can see here, now I have this layout of my site. And if I were to click these, they're all blocks. Your templates are just blocks, just like your page content is blocks. It's all the same concept. When I click on this, you can see that this is a footer. And so if I go here, you can see that I'm in the footer template, which is inside the index template. And so I have index here. Let's see here. The footer is a template part. And so your templates are comprised of template parts that have blocks in them. And then your templates can actually have blocks in them that are not in template parts. And again, I know that this is a lot of templates and a lot of concepts to throw out there. But I hope that you can at least make the connection of some of these for what you would usually do in an old style theme. You would have your footer.php style. That's a template part in your old style. So it's the same in here. We have our header and we have our footer, and you can actually have multiple types of headers, multiple types of footers, and so on. And then, oops, I clicked out of it. Just like you have different template files in your theme, you have a 404 that you can have a template in the editor, a page template, a single post template, and each of these will display differently, but it will affect how that type of content shows up on your site. And so this combined with your theme JSON file is going to be a way for you to write less smaller themes. You'll have to write less code for a theme to have the things that you need it to, and be able to, your clients, if you have clients that have sites, they'll have more power with what they'll be able to do, or not so much, depending on how you structure your theme.json file and what you allow them to edit, and so on. So I'm going to pause for questions. I know I've thrown a lot out there at this last section, so I want to see what questions people have. But keep in mind that, again, this is all stuff that the template editor is opt-in for 5.8, and you also have to have the Gutenberg plugin. So this is kind of a look into the future of, these were the things we added in 5.8, because we're laying that foundation for, this is where we're going, and this will be in the next release or within the next release or two.
I'm glad you separated that, because a few months back at another meeting when they were showing this, it was like, oh no, who's going to get this? Who's going to get this? But that you're saying that all those other things have to be in place first. And I'm assuming, do you know if this is role-based, like only admins are going to be able to do this, or do you know?
Good question. I don't know the answer for sure, but my assumption is that it will be just like, there'll be capabilities just like editing posts, editing pages. There should be edit template. And if there isn't, I'll probably flag that, because we should have that same fine-grained capability management. Yeah.
But that's good. Yeah, we were having some conversations about that. We were a little nervous.
I see, Lisa, you have a hand?
Yes. So if you're building a site today, I feel like we're in this transition time and trying to figure out what kind of theme we should be looking at today, so that in 6 months, when 5.9 is out, we're not having to unravel everything. So being a little proactive now without, doing all the experimental features that aren't quite ready and needing the Gutenberg plugin and what have you. So wanting to use blocks, wanting to choose a theme that seems reasonable. I mean, I think an obvious choice, I don't know, it would be 2021 seems like a reasonable choice that would stand the test of time when 5.9 and templates and everything come out. I mean, is that correct, or is that, am I on the wrong track?
No, you're definitely right. We are definitely in a transition time. It's a little bit, I don't want to say you're wasting your time doing an old style theme, because they're going to work for the foreseeable future. But I also don't want to say that you should only build a new block-based theme, because that's not right for everybody either. So because you need the Gutenberg plugin to harness this full site editing to its full potential, that's not right for every website, because it's some of the stuff in the plugin is still experimental, and so they're still refining it. They're still trying some things to get it correct in a way that it's ready for everybody. So there might be some sites where that's fine. Like, maybe you're an agency and, you're playing around with some of this new stuff and you're okay with your site being a sandbox. That's great. So in that instance, I definitely recommend it. I think everybody should be experimenting with this that builds themes locally on like test sites, and going from there. As far as what theme to pick, there are, let's see, you can go to, there is a way to see the themes that support this. So if you go
Oh, really?
to
That's an option to filter. That,
yes, so you
that
can
would be
come here
smart.
and select full site editing. So these themes are all the themes that fully support full site editing. That said, Gutenberg releases every 2 weeks and there's changes in it and they're constantly refining things. So even these themes may be needing a little bit of updating. And so that's why it's not right for everybody. The default bundled themes that ship with WordPress, the 2020s, those are always compatible with the newest features of WordPress. But where this is such a drastic change in how we theme, like the traditional way to theme is you take a theme and you can actually make a child theme and change only the things that you want to change, but it still relies on that parent theme. So there's so many sites out there with this setup that we can't just change fundamentally how those themes work, but we can ensure that they won't break with the new features of WordPress. So usually with every major release, almost every default theme also has an update. And that's also the case. There will be an update. And for the most part, they have some styling fixes in them to help make the widget editor look a lot better. And some block patterns were added to the older themes, and some updates to the block patterns to embrace some of the newer blocks. So because of that transition state, we can't just fundamentally change how those themes work, because there are other child themes that are depending on the way that it's structured. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's tough. There's no definitive answer, but I think that everybody should be experimenting with block-based themes. Don't be afraid of building a classic theme now, because they will continue to work for the foreseeable future. I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years we still have a thriving classic style theme area in some way. So that they're not going to just go away overnight, and they're also not going to stop working. WordPress is very serious about backwards compatibility, and so that will continue to be, going forward as we add more and more blocks in full site editing. Older sites and older code will still continue to work to the best of our ability.
I find that I was with a client working on an old site that has classic editor. And what happens now after the 2.5 years of using blocks is like, I want things. It's like, oh, I can't get this. Oh, I can't. And that is probably going to push me over the edge as far as like, you guys need to redesign, because in your new development, you start using all these features and you realize how cool they are.
Yeah, and if you're tinkering on your own and you're learning how it works, it also it improves your ability to do things more quickly, like, right? So like there's always that threshold of like, oh, I don't understand that enough to do it for a client, because it'll take more time, and maybe I pay by the project or whatever. And so there's you got to get to that threshold where you're comfortable diving in and doing it. Yeah, and I was thinking last week, I was thinking that like now there are WordPress users that don't even know that there was a classic editor. Like WordPress as they know it has been and always will be the block editor, right? So I keep thinking about the scenario of what if you took one of those people and you gave them the classic editor and you said, okay, go ahead and publish your content. And I keep thinking about how difficult that would be and what we put up with for so long, because it was such a drastic change and it was not an easy problem to solve. But the block editor has come a long, long way, and it's I can't imagine myself trying to go back.
Yeah, I've gotten used to, and I know we took a poll a little bit ago on who was using it, and there was quite a lot of smaller agencies, freelancers, which we still have a lot of people on the classic editor. They're just either the client doesn't want to spend the money for the change, or people aren't convinced enough. I think I hit that convinced thing. I made myself, and I'm at the point. I went somewhere about 6 months ago. I was like, oh yeah, I can't live without this now.
Yeah. And I will say that the classic editor plugin is, so two things. If you're not quite ready for the widget screen to be block-based, there is a classic widgets plugin. So similar to the classic editor, there is a way to give yourself more time to ensure compatibility and make sure everything will work with your setup. So that is an option as well. I do recommend that you, like I said, spin up a staging site, give it a try. You might be surprised. Same with the classic editor plugin. If it's been a while since you've tried, give it another try. Just see how it goes. Like I said, it's a lot more stable now. There's a lot of the problems have been solved that were still being worked on initially. And the classic editor plugin is set to be the initial support window that was announced was until the end of this year. So at the end of this year, the plugin won't go away. It will still be under the WordPress umbrella. But it hasn't been updated in a little while, just because it's basically a stay the course plugin. Like it's just meant to allow people to continue using that old editor. So if you read that it only supported till the end of the year, don't get nervous. I understand that some people are late adopters for monetary, budgetary reasons or whatever, or learning curve. Like it's a big learning curve, but yeah. I encourage you to give the block editor another shot and see how it goes. And but if you still have to be on the classic editor, don't worry about that. It's still going to be there.
I'm going to share a link again where you can, this Jurassic Ninja, you can spin up an install that'll last for 7 days. So if you don't have the means for a demo site, you can try these all out and install the beta plugin. You would have to install the beta plugin, right? So yeah, definitely play with it.
If you want to test 5.8, there's a plugin called the beta tester plugin.
Right.
And then you can install that. You would select, I think it's the Bleeding Edge Nightlies option. In the WordPress.org/news release posts for every release, we publish the RC and the beta posts on there. It has the instructions right in the top of what you would do. And so you could download 5.8, play around with it, see how it goes. Maybe you import your site's content and see how it looks, and go from there.
Excellent.
Would there be any impact on the screen builders with 5.8?
Good question. So you're talking about like Divi or
Elementor
Builder or whatever. Yep.
Page builder.
So I'm pretty sure, I haven't tested all of them, but I'm pretty sure that they've all solved this in some way. So Some of them have blocks that you insert into the block editor that reference their template editor. Some of them just keep the classic editor, or they block the block editor in some way. So I can't say for sure, but I'm assuming that they're all testing on the latest version and keeping tabs on what's going on in Gutenberg. And they're kind of doing their own thing. So test out definitely with your site and your setup and your page builder. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out for any issues there, and reach out to them. I'm sure that they would happily accept any bug reports or anything that you find that's incompatible.
And then, thank you, Jerome, for asking that. Yeah, those other page builders. Yep. But they'll. I just hate to think of them. I'm going to stop the recording now, but we're going to stay on. So I want to say officially thank you, Jonathan, for sharing with us and coming tonight. We really appreciate it.